Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Sacred Social Studios podcast. I'm your host, Lexi Forbes, and I'm very excited because I am now legally a Forbes. I just got my social security card in the mail, so my name is officially Forbes, which it's so crazy. I was just talking to my mom, and my mom was like, "Oh, you're not my baby anymore," because now my last name is different, and so it's just kind of weird, but it's a good last name to have, and I'm super excited about it. Forbes magazine, Forbes is the money maker. It's just very fitting for me. So I'm very excited. Anyway, today's episode, we are asking the question: is Instagram still worth it? My honest thoughts after transitioning over to Substack. And the reason why I think that this is a good question to ask is because I personally have built my business off of Instagram. But let's be real, okay? Because does it even make sense to use it anymore at this point? If you've been wondering whether Instagram is still worth your time, this episode is for you. I'm going to share my raw, unfiltered thoughts on Instagram versus Substack, why I sort of left, and why maybe you should too. So we'll talk about it. Let's get right into the episode. And first, let's start with my love hate relationship with Instagram. So, why did I stay on Instagram for so long? Part of why I did was because Instagram was the go to platform for community engagement and visibility. Everybody was on Instagram. I've been with Instagram since its inception. Is that the right word? Conception? Yeah, I think it's conception. But basically, since the beginning. Okay. And I literally got an iPhone so I could get on Instagram. Because remember, back in the day, only iPhone users could use Instagram. So I literally bought my first iPhone because I wanted to use Instagram. At the time, photography was my biggest hobby. I loved videography and photography. So I just knew this was the platform for me. And I was super excited about it. So I, put up my little sepia filter. Come on, you guys know, and took pictures of my cats. I was in grad school, so I took pictures of me in school, my books that I was reading, things like that. It was super simple. And then over time, we obviously started to grow up, get jobs, start businesses, and eventually Instagram became the hub for every girl boss and boy boss and they boss out there. And so everyone was making money or trying to make money or trying to start a business. It was a wonderful platform for that purpose. So for a long time, I stayed on Instagram even past the time that I started to see a turnaround because I felt like at least my community is here. I still get engagement. I still get people talking to me. I still get new relationships that are starting every other day, or not every other day, but like every day I'm meeting new people. And because of that, I felt like I needed to stay on the platform. And also, as a warning, before, oh, it's 333 on the thing, yay, on the podcast. As a warning, my dogs are here. So if they start barking, I do apologize, but hopefully they won't. Hopefully, we'll get through this episode. Anyways, for me personally, stories was my favorite way to connect. I loved stories. So before Instagram, there was Snapchat, and Snapchat was that girl. Okay. I frequently would get on my Snapchat and I would just start sharing my stories, sharing me going to work, starting my first job out of grad school, all that stuff. That was how I kept up with my audience. So when Instagram stole, let's be clear, okay? Because they stole that from Snapchat. I was excited because I was like, okay, now I get to put my photos and my stories all in the same place. And people can just follow me on one platform rather than trying to find what am I doing minute by minute on Snapchat and then seeing my Instagram for my photos and things. Stories to me, it felt personal and it felt really casual, and it was also very effective eventually for sales. Once I started my businesses, that I was able to share the behind the scenes of my business, share the journey of being an entrepreneur, share the products and the services that I was creating, my books, my presentations, my webinars. Like, it was super easy to just show up. And Instagram is also great for short form content, right? It's great for quick updates and networking and meeting new people. So I stayed on Instagram because, well, those were all the wonderful benefits. But now the frustration of the platform is making me start to really consider, um, I don't think I'll ever 100% leave Instagram, but it's similar to Facebook where I still have a Facebook. I'm just rarely on it. And I feel like that's going to pretty much be the same with Instagram, where I'm not going to be on it as much, but it'll still be present. And I'll still have a profile on the platform. Um, so, a couple of the reasons why I started to look outside of Instagram was one, the algorithm changes. Because let's be clear, the algorithm is out to get you. No, I'm kidding. The algorithm makes it harder to get your content to be seen. Even if you have a solid content strategy, even if you are killing it with marketing and you are creating the most amazing, eye catching graphics, wonderful pieces of content, the algorithm still is deciding whether or not that is going to be seen by the majority of your followers and or non-followers, and that can be very discouraging. This platform started as a place for us to share creativity, but once it got bought by Facebook and then things started changing over the years, it's now become this platform where it's kind of like a rat race. You're really trying very hard to be seen, and those who already have the views, who already have lots of followers, they are finding it, pretty easy to be seen, like celebrities and things like that. But if you're just an average Joe like me and you're just a regular person, it might be really challenging to be seen online, because of the algorithm. Then there's the constant pressure to create and to show up daily to stay relevant. If you are posting in your stories, and you are probably showing up every day or every other day. And at first it's fun, right? Because it's like, yeah, I get to stay in touch with people, we get to stay connected. But over time, it can become really draining and exhausting to have to create content and start fresh every 24 hours. It's really exhausting. Now, of course, you can set breaks. You can decide that you, like one of my besties, she doesn't show up on the weekends. My other bestie used to be on Instagram, had her business there, and then now she went and she is working a traditional job. So she doesn't show up on Instagram as much. You can certainly do that too. But Instagram's platform is designed to make you want to come back. And so, more than likely, you're going to be posting to your stories or posting to your page pretty frequently. And that can lead to burnout and exhaustion. The other frustration that I have is the lack of ownership. One bad hashtag, okay? One shadow ban, one deactivation, and you lose your audience completely. You have no ownership of that audience. And that is very frustrating because a lot of times people say things like, oh, the shadow ban doesn't exist. I know Adam Mosseri said that. I don't think anybody believes him when he says that, because he's also the same person that said that hashtags still work, and a random video said that hashtags don't work. So we can't really trust the people, at Meta over there as to whether or not things work or don't work. But what I do know is that, um, if you don't do what Instagram likes you to do, which their desires, oh, there goes our Cami boy, their desires are change and are different. And so, if Cami, for those of you who are watching, Cami is walking around, so hopefully he's chill. Yes. Okay. So for those of you who are not watching, he's walking behind me. So anyways, so the lack of ownership, one deactivation, one shadow ban, any of that, and you just lose access to your audience. And not only in terms of like, the platform also just, it could disappear. But the fact that they can, I've had some of my clients have their accounts be deactivated by Instagram. And then when they tried to get their account back, they ran into struggles. That's, it's really frustrating. It's really frustrating to have to deal with that for months on end, not having access to your account, not just because somebody hacked it, that's another issue, but just because Instagram itself is not making themselves available to solve the problem of why your account was deactivated and then giving you your access back. That's never happened to me, thankfully, but I have had clients that that's happened. And I just hate that, because then that means that you can't access that entire audience that you've built over the years. And then the other thing, the last frustration that I had was burnout, with always having to keep up with the trends and do engagement hacks and constant creating of content, that churning of content over and over and over again. And of course, you can repurpose, you can do all these things, which I highly recommend to avoid burnout. But it does happen pretty frequently when you're on a platform that requires you to show up every 24 hours in order to stay relevant. Obviously, you don't have to show up every 24 hours, but if you really want to be seen, Instagram wants you on the platform as frequently and as long as possible. And they reward you based off of that. And so, doing that work all the time can get exhausting, especially if you're not turning a profit. If you are turning a profit, you may find that it's a motivator for you, constantly showing up and creating content for people and then closing sales and everything. But for many people these days, we're not closing sales the way we did in 2020 and 2021. Okay. Back then, money was falling from the skies. But now in 2025, people are holding onto their wallets a little bit more tightly. And even if they're not, we're not being seen at the same rate that we were in the past. And I really feel like Instagram is starting to come down to this place where it's just not relevant. It's literally not relevant as much as it used to be. Let me say that, because it doesn't even lead in the trends. You know what I mean? For example, TikTok leads in the trends even after being banned. It starts on TikTok, the funny jokes, this lip syncing, the dancing, and then like a month later, it's on Instagram. So it's not even leading the way in terms of starting the trends, which makes it not as relevant as something like TikTok. I mean, it is what it is. It is what it is. So for me, the moment that I realized Instagram wasn't working for me was a couple of things. First was noticing that my engaged audience was the same core group and it wasn't growing. I was seeing the same people over and over and over again, but I wasn't being exposed or pushed out to wider audiences. And I knew at that point that it's important for me to nurture who is showing up. But at the same time, if most of these people are either not wanting to work with me, they don't see the value in what I've created, and they're just kind of like watching and just looking, then that's not going to create a sustainable business. I'm just going to have attention, but I'm not necessarily going to be making any money. And then that leads to a business that dies. And we don't want that, right? The other thing was I started realizing that I didn't want to fight for visibility anymore. I wanted a platform where my audience actually sees my content and I'm not having to go toe to toe with the algorithm every single time I create something. I want to be able to feel inspired to create and then create that thing and not feel like now that I created it, because I only got 2 likes on it or 10 likes on it or 10 views on it, that it means that something is wrong with my content. And I know a lot of people content creators and marketers will say, well, your content is boring and blah, blah, blah. However, that same piece of content can go on TikTok and go viral. I mean, I've had that happen several times where I will post 2 pieces of content at the same time on Instagram and TikTok. On Instagram, it'll get literally 100 views, 9 likes, no comments. But then that same exact video will be on TikTok and it will get 800 likes, 30,000 views, and I'm not even joking, 31,000 views, and 233 comments. And I'm thinking of one in particular. Like, this is, it tells you that something is off, something isn't right. And I just felt like I don't want to keep fighting for this. I want to be able to actually just create my content, and then the people who want to see me. And then I also realized that with Substack in particular, it gave me more room, it gave me more depth, real engagement, and ownership. I was able to have access to emails and be able to get directly into people's inboxes when I post, in addition to the fact that it gave me more space to be able to talk. Because when you're on Instagram, it's really about the short form content. But when you're on Substack, it's about long form. It's about being able to give yourself room to expand on your ideas. So for me, let's move into why I chose Substack over Instagram, what made me eventually do the switch. For me, it's about building deep and meaningful content and no pressure to keep up with trends. I want to be able to just create what feels right based off of my intuition. Two, I own my audience. Emails are direct, and there's no algorithm gatekeeping my content from my community. Three, I had better monetization options, being subscriptions, paid posts, and eventually long-term earning potential. Because that's the other thing too. When you're creating on Instagram, everything is free unless you have 10,000 followers and a couple of other things, requirements that you've met. Then you can create subscriptions. But even the subscriptions, um, uh, option on Instagram isn't really that hot, to be completely honest. It just, as someone who has paid for Instagram subscriptions before, it really isn't that great. And I find that people on Instagram are inconsistent as well with the content that they create, for their subscribers, so it doesn't end up being worth it. Versus with Substack, and I've become a member or become a subscriber of quite a few Substacks, and they're actually consistent with their content. It's specific to what I need to know, and it allows me to learn different things about astrology or about manifestation or whatever it is that I'm following. I actually get consistent, valuable content from it. And so the fact that now I know that on my Substack, I can eventually continue to expand it into more paid content and more paid posts. Now I'm actually getting paid for the content that I'm creating instead of just creating something that, one, no one is seeing, and two, even if they do see, I'm not getting paid for it. And then four, another reason why I chose Substack over Instagram is because people come to read, not just mindlessly scroll. There's a more intentionality behind people showing up on Substack versus on Instagram. People are just literally just scrolling, doom scrolling through. So they're not really, their attention span is very small, and they're coming on with the intention of just being entertained, or just being like, sorry, I got distracted because Kimmy started crying and I didn't want him to bark. But yeah, he cries sometimes because he wants to go outside, and it's just the cutest thing. It's so cute, but that's neither here nor there. He's just looking out the window. But the point is that people come on the website with the intention of reading and building relationships and sharing their thoughts and sharing their feelings. And that for me is a no brainer then, because then I'm actually building real relationships. So let's talk about the differences between Instagram and Substack. First, Instagram is very fast, it's short, and it's visual, versus Substack is long form, deep, and valuable. Not to say that Instagram doesn't offer you any value at all, but because of the fact that it's a very short, platform where everything has to be like 30 seconds, and then even 30 seconds these days is too long. Because of that, it can make it very challenging to create valuable content when you only have 6 seconds or 2 seconds to grab someone's attention. Instagram also, the algorithm decides who sees you, versus Substack, your audience actually gets your content. Huge difference, right? These people that are following you, that are subscribed to you, are actually going to see what you have. Unless they have a full inbox and they're not checking it, they're going to see what you've created. And then lastly, Instagram is a constant creation hustle. You have to be making content all the time. Like I said, at minimum, every 24 hours if you want to be seen on the platform. Whereas Substack, it's sustainable, repurposable, there you go, content. I was struggling with that word. But because you can take that content and then continue to repurpose it, you can do the same thing on Instagram, certainly, but realistically you want to be creating something new, something, you can't just take that content and then like you can repurpose, for example, a reel and reframe how you say something, but you have to create that over again. Versus when it comes to Substack, you can just rewrite it or even just repost it and people will see it. And it's sustainable. It lasts for a longer time. It's almost like LinkedIn, where your content can take off a week after you've posted it. That's the same thing with Substack. So let's move on to answering the question of whether or not you should leave Instagram. How do you know if Instagram is still worth it? Is it still worth your time? First off, I think you should stay on Instagram if it still gets you leads, if your audience is actively engaging with you, and if you love the platform. If you enjoy creating for Instagram and you're getting leads, your audience is engaging with you, you still feel inspired to show up, then stay and continue to create content for it. I don't think that Instagram is going to go anywhere. I think that it's still going to be there, kind of like Facebook, where it's still just there. And there's going to be an audience for people on Instagram. So if you find that you're being seen by your audience and your community is still showing up for you and you're making money, then keep it, stay. But I feel like you should move away from Instagram if one, you're feeling burnt out, you're feeling uninspired, two, you're tired of chasing engagement, and three, if you want a platform that has better longevity, meaning that when you post something, it isn't about the first 10 minutes of that post taking off. And then if it doesn't, now that content is like gone forever. No, instead, this is about content that stays for a long time. I've had episodes of my podcast where literally I get like 300 listens to it a week later versus, if I were to create something on Instagram, people say this happens, and I'm not saying that it doesn't happen, but they say things like reels can take off a week or 2 weeks later, blah blah blah. I've actually never had that happen. If my reels take off, they take off like that day or the next day. But if they don't take off and hit like 300 likes or something like that, or a couple of shares or things like that by that end of the night or by the next day, more than likely it's not going to get seen. I've had it actually, you know what? I have one reel that I know of for sure that still cycles through and it's been like a year. So, okay, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. But the point is, one reel, I've created so many reels and only one of them have I had that experience where it's a longevity thing. Substack allows you to have that longevity. So here's the best strategy I feel moving forward. And this is similar to the strategy that I'm using now. One, use Instagram as a funnel to drive people to your Substack, and don't make Instagram your main content hub. Instead, make Substack your main content hub. I think the best way to use Instagram these days, instead of daily posting, shift it to high value strategic shares. What are the things that are unique about your business, about your offer, about your product, about your personality? How can you help other people and give them a high value transformation or high value tip, and then share those things, instead of posting every single day? What I was doing before was I was pretty much posting every single day, except for weekends or holidays, but still, even then, pretty much those times as well. And now I'm posting, but I'm really just posting whenever I have something of high value to say, or to point it to my Substack. If I've posted something on Substack that I think that people on Instagram in my community would love to see, then I make sure to remind them that the Substack exists. The other thing is, I think it's the to grow on Instagram, focus on your Instagram stories and your DMs for personal engagement, but not the feed. I feel like the feed is great for well, unless you're talking about reels. If you're talking about reels, then I think yes, reels, Instagram stories, and DMs are the way to grow and nurture and build relationships. But if you're tired of showing up on the feed, then just stick to stories, just stick to DMs, and that's it. Unless you're also tired of those things too, then again, kind of, go all the way back to the top where I said basically you can move away from IG if you're feeling burnt out. So treat Instagram like it's a lead magnet. Drive your followers to your email list, to your podcast, and to your Substack. So this is how I'm using it now. My new strategy is Instagram is no longer my main content hub. It's just a traffic source. It's just something that helps me to get people to my Substack, to get people to my threads, to get them to my offers. I use my stories to engage. I use feed posts like reels to educate, and then I use DMs to convert and have conversations. And then also, instead of chasing followers, I just prioritize email subscribers. So now it's like I'm just inviting people to just join my Substack. I even have it in my bio that I'm not talking as much on Instagram as much as I'm talking on Substack. So come on over and join for free. I prioritize those email subscriptions. And then I think the ideal balance between Instagram and Substack is look at Substack as if it's your home base. This is where you have long form, deep connection, community building content. Then look at Instagram as a lead generator. This is short form visibility, casual engagement. You're not showing up on it every single day and you're not putting all your eggs into that basket. Use your Instagram to tease your content and then direct people to Substack for the full experience. You could also do the same thing with TikTok if you want, but I feel like TikTok is still pretty relevant despite the ban. And so I think that that's kind of good there. So Instagram can still work for you, but if you're ready for deeper, more sustainable content creation, Substack is where it's at. You do not have to quit Instagram completely, but you should be intentional about how you're using it. If you need help shifting from Instagram to Substack, I would love to do a session with you so you can book a one-on-one strategy session with me. We can talk about how to move your content, how to repurpose your content. We could talk about your ideal client and how we find those people on Substack. I'm so excited because I am 5 people away from hitting 400 subscribers in less than 45 days, which is insanity. I'm so grateful. And I already have 10 paid subscribers in less than 45 days. Like, come on, this is amazing. So I think I know a thing or two about growing on. Oh, there we go. Hi, Katie, baby. So I think I know a thing or two about growing on Substack, and I can certainly help you do exactly the same. So thank you so much for tuning in. I look forward to hearing your thoughts on Substack versus Instagram. If you have any questions, of course, reach out to me. On Instagram, you can DM me, or you can go to my Substack and talk to me directly in the chat room, or as leave a comment on one of my posts. And I will see you guys in the next episode. Have a wonderful and beautiful day. Bye.